Hey guys, this is the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast with Joseph Sampson, I believe. He's That Black Chemist, if I remember correctly, on TikTok. You can follow him. And then, Joseph, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I'd love to. Essentially, I have been a PhD chemist at UT Austin for about 2 years or so. But I realized early on in 2025 that research wasn't the correct career for me. And so, just by evaluating my values, my interests, and what I wanted to do, I realized that going into content creation and going into a more science communication based role was more suited to my lifestyle and more suited to my happiness. And if you want to find me, of course, you can find me on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram as well, That Black Chemist. And then right now, actually, I'm working on and I'm about to launch a newsletter this week, which is also That Black Chemist. And I'd really appreciate if you can go over there and subscribe to that for free.
Okay. Is it just like an email that you're sending out regularly?
Yep,
Okay,
regular email.
cool. So you were saying off camera just before we started that you were going to talk about, I think, the transition from what you were doing at UT to like what you're doing now.
Yes. Essentially, when I was at UT, I was a PhD researcher over there, and the workflow of what I had over there is a lot different than the work that I do now. In particular, as a researcher, you have a pretty big you have a lot of work that's on your hands constantly, and you kind of have to learn to juggle through things, multiple projects, or knowing how to present certain research to different people, trying to, of course, manage your time properly and work on the things that get you closer to papers. And that entire workflow was well suited to a particular type of person, somebody who just finds a lot of fascination in working in science and being able to basically solve abstract problems that might not really necessarily have a direct application to the real world immediately. And I realized early on that I wasn't that type of person, so I had to pivot.
Hmm. Was it disconcerting for you? Like, did you just so you have your PhD or you were working on it?
I was working on it.
Working on it. So, what did it feel like to sort of drop that?
Oh, it felt amazing.
Okay.
I didn't even I wasn't even like worried at all.
Yeah. Because when I dropped out of college, I'd gotten sick before I went into the wellness space I'm in now. It was very disconcerting to like leave that behind.
I understand.
Yeah. And then for you, like, what do you actually plan on doing as far as like income? Because I'm not exactly sure how it was structured before when you were at UT.
So I guess I'll talk a little bit about how the income works at UT. So I was on something called a fellowship, which essentially is a third party that funds your research because they see a lot of great potential in you being able to publish papers. And because I had left UT, the fellowship was then terminated. So I no longer get that money. But right now, at least, I'm doing a couple of things. Obviously, I'm working on my social media pages and the newsletter that will likely generate some active and passive income for me. But in terms of like my main career, I'm also looking for a lot of, more scientific sales oriented jobs. So showing people how a particular equipment works, how they could do research with it, and trying to convince them to buy it from whatever vendor that I'm representing.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to pivot into something that's like connected to what you were doing, and it wasn't like a rough transition.
Agreed.
Yeah. Is there anything like particular you wanted to go into about your interests in chemistry or whatever it is you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. The thing that I'm doing now, obviously, is I'm doing a lot of science communication. So, one of the things I really, really noticed a lot over my time in undergrad and grad school is by basically building up your science education, you can answer a lot of really common questions that a lot of people who might not study this stuff really understand that well. And so, and I can give you an example of this. Like one of the things being like, for example, like what is an acid? Well, there's a chemistry definition of an acid that's very specific. And then there's the common term that we use for acid, which is just, oh, anything that like burns you and like burns a hole through, the lab floor, like we see in like Dexter's laboratory and like other media.
Yeah.
And so I like posting content that, apply some of the science that I learned to sort of answer those basic everyday questions people might have.
Yeah. When I looked at your TikTok, that seemed to be what you were doing. And I was like, sitting and listening to some of it in the way that you were parsing it out. You were looking at the definition and then trying to explain it to people, not only in layman's terms, but also in a more, I guess, scientifically correct way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because explanations suck. So I wanted to not suck as much when explaining.
Yeah, most of the connection I have with chemistry, honestly, I admittedly, what was my teacher's name in school? I can't remember his name. I took chemistry and physics, and I did a little better in chemistry than I did in physics, but I did poorly in both. And it wasn't particularly, I hate to say this, they weren't connecting what I was learning to like my everyday experience. I only really became interested in chemistry when it came to entheogenic substances or like hallucinogenic drugs and how they interact in the brain. As a philosophy student, did a lot of drugs in college, if you want to call it that. And then food and cooking. I watched Good Eats with Alton Brown, and when Alton would talk about like Maillard reactions and the browning reactions that occur that cause caramelization, there's an entire branch of like food chemistry where they're manipulating this in various ways to get different flavors and textures. Once I started dealing with that, it was easier for me to make something that was day to day, that I related to, like, well, why does acidity in vinegar, like, why does it cut fat? Like, why do you want to have pickles with your brisket? That sort of thing. It was more a way of me of connecting with that information. Whereas when it was like, well, how many moles of whatever? And I'm like, as a high school kid, it just didn't relate to me at that time.
Yeah, no, I fully understand and get what you're saying. So I guess how much experience do you have necessarily maybe like talking to like scientists or chemists, like outside of course of just like, well, you got one person, that's me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm a layman for sure, but so okay. If you get to something and I don't know, I go, what's that? Like, I don't have any problem asking that. And it's always like trying to push my edges. Part of the reason I wanted to have a longer chat with you about it is I wanted to see, well, like, what's going on in a chemist's brain? Like, what is he dealing with? You're like, well, no, I'm in analytic chemistry. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, specifically as part of the genre, if you will. It's like chemistry and then physics. And I would talk to people, and it's like psychology. I was a philosophy student. It's like, if you talk to a physicist and you talk to a biologist, does the physicist really think that biology is a science? It's like, the difference is, like, chemistry is kind of in between the two. It's like the science is so brutal inside physics in relation to like the math, where like they're studying atomic, subatomic particles and how quarks are behaving. So it's like there's an answer. But when you get to biology, it's like there's so many layers, and it's harder and harder, I would dare say, to isolate variables.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And obviously, being in chemistry, you definitely do get a mix of that sort of qualitative and quantitative side of the sciences. Like you said, I was an analytical chemist, which, in case you don't know, that's basically an area of chemistry that deals with identifying unknown like compounds and samples. So to give you a basic example, if you have a white powder that's in front of you, you have no idea if that's sugar, you have no idea if that's Coke, you got no idea if that's cotton. And basically, analytical chemist over here, my job is to figure out what the hell is that made out of, and how much is its distribution in that sample. And yeah, so it is decently quantitative. And I would say typically I probably the research that I did was probably a little bit more on the physics side of things, I'd say, than the biology side of things.
Yeah.
But in terms of the whole, do physicists, I guess, even consider biology science? I think they might ask that, but not so much in the sense of, oh, like, look what these guys are doing. It's like not even as much math. It's more like, what the hell are these guys even doing? I have no idea right now.
No, and the thing is, so let me give a little bit more about my background. So I was a philosophy student, and I was very kind of interested in interdisciplinary studies. My take on the biological sciences was deeply influenced by E.O. Wilson. And E.O. Wilson was a biologist who studied ants. He's kind of Darwin's heir. And I read a book or two. I read Biophilia, another book he wrote about evolution. And then I ran into a book called Consilience, The Unity of Knowledge. And I lost it because I was like, wow, I've got a scientist actually explaining what I was doing in school, where I was trying to connect the dots between all these different disciplines. And E.O. Wilson was talking about that. But when I have E.O. Wilson, who's involved in the biological sciences, who goes, guys, I understand that we're trying to figure out how many stars are in the universe, but we have no idea how many species are on our own planet. They've never been cataloged. They've never been fully researched. He's like, I deal with this every day, and I specialize in ants. And like, we're still finding species of like large mammals on Earth that we didn't know existed. It's not been cataloged. So when you think about just that, now extrapolate that to chemistry, to physics, and beyond and beyond and beyond, there's such a gap between those two different scientists that it's much more vast than I think people realize. Like the gap gets smaller over time as we get more information, but it's like, I understood, I think, from his perspective, having read several books, just how far the divide was and how much more work we had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things too is that science obviously isn't the end all be all. But it's just like our best assumption of things. And like if you wanted to, I don't know, model the behavior of some, like, if you were like a physicist and you want to model the behavior of like a flag flowing or whatever, you wouldn't use like quantum theory where you pretend that the whole flag is like a wave function, because what the hell does that even mean? But even though you technically could do that if you had a big enough sheet of paper and you had enough time on your hands, which, trust me, you don't have enough time. But at least talking a little bit about science and the blend with philosophy. I mean, in the past, like you're saying, a lot of scientists were philosophers. Like people like Kepler and Newton and Euler, who were big in chemistry and big in physics, all did oftentimes spend a lot of time contemplating. Okay, we have all this science, but what's sort of the metaphysical meaning behind it? And one thing that's a little bit of a shame is that there's no longer so much of this blending of different fields anymore, at least at universities, like you used to see. Instead, oftentimes I run into a lot of people that are just like, okay, I don't care about any of these other classes. I just want to take like my main core classes. And I mean, to some extent, I mean, I've said that too. I'm not necessarily innocent in that either, but in the past, even though education might have been a little bit more restricted, it was definitely, I feel like, maybe a little bit deeper in terms of like the meaning behind it.
Yeah, the point at which, and I'm assuming probably Da Vinci and prior, there was a point at which one person could kind of understand what we currently knew about the cosmos and art and philosophy and religion. Those days are gone. Like, people have so much data because of the internet and access to information and artificial intelligence now that I don't think anybody can, like, all of human knowledge is so vast. There can't be a savant who can be a polymath in that way. Not all the
Definitely,
disciplines. Yeah.
definitely agree. And I mean, that probably is definitely true to some extent. But I guess my thing is that, you know, I would say that maybe instead of diving in on some very, very specific area of chemistry or taking some very, very specific class, maybe have a class where you kind of learn about like applications of science in the world, or how you can blend science and philosophy, like kind of an interdisciplinary type of science or type of field that I
Yeah.
think I would really enjoy, or maybe teaching, a lot of philosophers whether a certain idea that might be metaphysical in nature might have some sort of like physical description in practice. So like somebody who might be thinking of like, what is emotions, what is sadness, they talk to somebody who's like a physiologist, for example, and they could be like, well, when we see sadness, we see this thing bind with this thing, and that can help both people complete their theory much more thoroughly.
It gets, oh man, like if you dig, and so I was a philosophy student. I dropped out, but when you I got so used to thought experiments in a class, and to give you an idea, this is what I saw in university, and I'm only doing it from my perspective because I'm asking questions about the world around me. I go into philosophy, and finally, you're allowed to ask these questions, some of which have answers, many which don't, and you hit ideas like free will, and you begin a debate in class, and you discuss and you discuss and you discuss and you discuss and you discuss, and then somebody goes, well, wait, but what do you mean by free will? They keep moving the goalpost because they can't fully define it. And it's like, I was so comfortable with saying I don't know. It would get to a point where, frankly, what Consilience talked about, what E.O. Wilson discussed in Consilience, is the reason you don't discuss politics and religion in a bar is because the sciences have not gotten close enough to explain things so that those areas are not as controversial. They're very opinionated at this point. People get angry, they get upset. But when you take a thing like, okay, somebody gets upset, it's just a chemical response in their brain. So if you change the chemistry in their brain, does it mean they no longer get upset? And at what point does brain separate from mind?
I don't know.
And it's like, and that stuff was like, I was like, yeah, like, let's, those sorts of questions. I remember sitting in a class, and it was like an ethics class. You talked about this, about having a well-rounded education. What I would notice is I'm taking these philosophy classes. I was really interested in ethics and bioethics, and I would go in and I'm like, yeah, we're going to ask these ethical questions. This is going to be great. And then we would get time for like the test was coming up. We've been in class for a month, 3 times a week or whatever. The people who came in as part of a humanities requirement, because they were engineers, would hear my professor say, well, there's no right or wrong answer. You're just going to write a 5-page essay. And they're like, and you could see the just panic on their faces because they're engineers. Like, there's an answer about how much pressure can this bridge take before it collapses. And you need to know that, and it needs to be correct. Whereas as a philosophy student, I'm like, I didn't even take notes. I just listen and just write a 5-page essay. I have a high verbal acuity, so it was easy to do. But I realized, like, they're in a totally different field with a totally different mentality about like how the world operates and works. And it's expressed through, in their case, in the science background that I didn't have.
Yeah, definitely. I think in particular, though, just the fact that, and actually, I feel like a lot of those engineers are probably committing a fallacy, even though a lot of scientists think are due to, which is that assuming that there is one way or one solution to things, because, like, oftentimes in science, there's usually people make measurements or estimates, like relative to other things. So somebody would be like, well, okay, how much I guess how many molecules of cocaine are in this like white powder sample, and you could say, okay, well, there's 80% of it, but that 80% is not saying if it's 80% by volume, 80% by mass, 80% by, dare I say, moles. I know that's kind of a dirty word to the pre-meds. Um, but oftentimes you'll have to make a lot of decisions like that, even like within your research. Like, okay, I have this data, it looks good to me, but how should I interpret like what things are actually important to highlight, like what's relevant and everything like that. And that is somewhat of a philosophical question, and it kind of so in a weird way, actually, philosophy does breach into the sciences,
Oh yeah,
even when you
yeah,
do get things
yeah.
right.
I see. The reason I was so taken with E.O. Wilson and that book Consilience was he was doing what I did. I worked for a copier management. Hey, if Mark is out there, Mark Miles, how you doing, man? That was my boss in college. I would go from like building to building, dealing with the copiers. We had this little thing called a Cushman, so he'd drive around. So I would go from the biosciences, building, or the Hal Russell building, to like the chemistry building, to the math building, to the English building. But what I kept thinking about was the fact that I was trying to do interdisciplinary studies. I wanted to see when does physics meet English? And when did English meet chemistry? And when did chemistry meet physics? That stuff was more interesting to me than the pure, sciences, if you will. Those sorts of questions, when E.O. Wilson was asking them as a biologist, I was like, oh, I just felt so not lonely that other people were looking at this, and that a scientist would take time to even address the idea. To me, I could see where it connected to everything else, but frankly, the sciences had not progressed to the point to be able to like completely, I would say, define, well, what is the self? What is consciousness? Mind? Free will? Like all these concepts, and it's like, well, what do you mean by love? And they're like, ooh, man. like the time I remember a professor basically getting to this point where it was like, okay, you had to kind of make a choice. Are you completely like physical in the sense that like humans are just made up of molecules, or is there something about like spirit basically? And when that was posed in such a way in class, to see people just like freak out about it, because some people were philosophy students who wanted to eschew the existence of God. Other people were trying to have like Kierkegaardian kind of like Christian philosophy. Like, it was so strange to see what happens when the things that you think of as the bedrock that your life is built on start to be questioned away, to the point where like, do you really know that, or are you just assuming?
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing too, obviously, is that uh, I don't. I actually, me personally, actually, since I've gotten more and more skilled and knowledgeable in science, I've actually become more, I guess you could say, religious. Not necessarily in like a traditional religious stance of like following Christianity or Islam or any other type of religion, but more so religious in the sense of, there must be something out there that exists outside of like the physical universe that explains so many things like human behavior and emotions and everything. Because somebody who might be subscribed to like a purely material worldview will just say it's all atoms and molecules. It looks like, okay, well, what made the atoms and molecules? And it's like, well, it's the protons and neutrons and electrons. Okay, so then what the hell made the protons and neutrons and electrons? Well, I mean, they come from quark. Well, who made the quarks?
Yeah.
And that's probably a question we'll never be able to solve, physically.
Mm-hmm.
But we could probably have a very good philosophical discussion, at least in terms of, whether something that is physical can come from something that's aphysical or non-physical, and would that non-physical thing be like, I don't know, like an actual god who came down and wrote all of these rules, and not only did they write the rules, but they actually gave us human beings things like emotion and passion and thoughts, things that we know exist even if we can't measure them. And to that, I mean, I have an answer, but I don't think my answer is that good, so I'm not going to reflect too much on it.
The materialist stance, I'm very comfortable saying I don't know, but seeing that in a philosophy class where the professor and the student were going back and forth, and the professor's he's not poking his belief. He's just like, he understands that this student is staunchly just a materialist, like you said. And it was so, you could see the turmoil about it. And it's like, ooh, let's see. I'm considered not a lot of fun at parties. Because I'm the guy who's like, well, what is free will? Like, I don't have any problems drinking a beer. And like, they're like, you got to leave Robert alone. He's been watching too many documentaries about who knows what. Like, he asks too many questions. It's like, we're having a party here. We don't have time to do all this. Those things are remarkably interesting. And one of the things about the podcast is I'm able to get people on from different vantage points and different perspectives to hopefully like expand my conception of what's going on. Like, the reason I ask you about chemistry is like, you know more about it than I do. So, given where we are now and what we've discussed, what's like percolating in your mind about where do we go next?
I think one thing we could talk a little bit about next is we've been talking a little bit about theory. I think we should talk a little bit about like communication and consultative skills, because there's a lot of people in philosophy and science who are got really big brains. They're really good at thinking. They're really good at publishing papers, but they don't really seem to be that good at explaining things to like people outside of their field and the general public.
Yeah, and I'll dare say this, and I think this might be confusing to some people. My work as a licensed massage therapist, where I'm expanding the practice, I understand what law says about like parameters and legal boxes for what I can and can't do. I can't diagnose and treat conditions, that sort of thing. But once I can put hands on people, it's pretty broad in terms of like helping people with pain. I see it fundamentally is squarely rooted in the biological sciences. We're dealing with humans and we're dealing with the nervous system. And I go, cool, let's ask more questions. And the therapist in my community goes, you got to stop. Like, no, everybody. And I'm like, guys, it is exceedingly difficult to do research on people in terms of pain relief. And it's very time consuming. And the research money goes to OxyContin. We're in the biological sciences. We can help people in pain. And when I try to like dig deeper, like I did as a philosophy student in this specific industry, it's like I hate to say that there's an anti-science leaning, but we're talking about an industry of people that on the one hand want to be approved for like insurance billing, and on the other hand want to deal with stuff like Reiki and energy healing. I don't want to demean it. It's just not, it's not my thing, but this is how I see what I'm doing, and I try to go, what is that? What's happening? And they're like, you got to stop. So the communication to lay people and the communication to your science colleagues.
Yeah, so at least for me, one thing that I found is somewhat intrinsic in me, and I've obviously improved on it, but something that's been intrinsic in me is that I'm very, very good at being able to communicate on a technical basis, a lot of like abstract concepts that might be a little bit difficult to understand, like in a textbook, or understand, if you're just hearing it from like an expert, and a much more simplified and still detail oriented explanations for things. And I've always been very, very enthusiastic of just going up, approaching people, asking them how they're doing, or asking them about a certain favor that they could do for me. And the first glimpse that I had that, you know, there was some room for a place for me in science education, or not science education, but science communication, was that when I applied to my PhD programs a few years ago, I went out of my way to like network with different professors and people who I just thought had an interesting page or interesting research necessarily. And just by doing that and sending emails to people and just sitting down and having a nice conversation, kind of like what we're doing here, I got accepted into all of my graduate programs that I applied to. And the thing that blew my mind a little bit was that my skills were probably like either below average or probably below average compared to the other people. Like I didn't have any I didn't have any publications. I was just like a 22-year-old dude who just thought science looked cool. I didn't seek out any guides or like any sources or anything on to figure out how to do this stuff. And there were people who were, in my opinion, much more intelligent than me in the lab, were more focused than me, but didn't get those same opportunities. And so I thought to myself, why isn't there anybody out there that wants to go in and really, really wants to bridge sort of that connection between science, classroom, and research with being able to just relate to somebody as a person? And that's why I enjoy what I'm doing now, because I get to combine both those things I like to do, which is talking and communicating and mentoring people, as well as being able to talk about like science and like my interests.
I am a huge fan of Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson for their capacity to try to explain astrophysics concepts in ways that the average person can understand. I rarely can think of an instance where either of them I've ever felt like looked down upon. They always like addressed it in such a way where they were trying to like encourage me to aspire to more.
Yeah, exactly. Both those people. I was a little young for Carl Sagan, so I don't really know much about him, besides those like Family Guy cutaway gags. Uh, there's like a funny one where like the Bible. It was like the universe is hundreds and hundreds of years old. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. But yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's a pretty good communicator. Um, Bill Nye, like when I was a little kid, they were playing a whole bunch of Bill Nye videos, like in class, and I thought that he did a pretty good job, at least communicating a lot of science. I mean, I didn't really understand the science that well. I just thought he was, quite charismatic. Um, but in like the modern day, at least in like, it seems like physics is starting to get it a little bit, because you do have people who in physics that do explain a lot of these things. But I feel like you don't really see that in some of the other sciences. Like you don't see anybody in like any climate scientists talking about climate change easily. You don't see
Dude,
people
as
talking
soon as you
about,
say that, I get anxious because climate science is so controversial.
yeah.
Yeah. Climate sciences and what else?
You don't see like a bunch of like virologists or like vaccine people saying like, this is a vaccine. It saves 99% of people. Sure, there might be like 0.1% of people out there who took a measles shot or took a COVID shot and they effing died, but you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, it's like I said, my industry that I got into in massage, I was a philosophy student. I was reading Descartes and, modern philosophy stuff. I was looking at Peter Singer and like, ethics and bioethics. So I get into massage school and they're like, anatomy, origin, insertion, musculoskeletal anatomy, muscles, bones. And I'm like, oh, okay. I can kind of see that. And then this is me. We had a class and I was like trying to explain to the students like some concepts related to like upper back and neck pain, which is probably 70% of what any massage therapist always deals with clients. They have upper back and neck pain. And as I started working, you looked at the musculoskeletal anatomy and I went, why does I felt like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. It was like the same thing. It's like, what's wrong? My upper back of my neck, my upper back of my neck, my upper back of my neck. And I'm like, why does everybody have this problem? And this is me. This is the philosophy student, right? But now the rubber meets the road. Like I have to help these people out of pain. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's because we're bipedal. Like the muscles in the front have like made people slouch because we walk upright, but it freed our hands to like chuck spears and make tools. Like a dog is a quadruped. So the dog's extensors, lead the dog's head up. When you take like dermatomes or something and you put somebody on all fours, it totally makes sense of like the nerve trunk going down to the limbs. But when you put them upright, you're like, this is weird. And it's like, when I made that reference in a class, I had some students be like, because they know what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at human evolution, hominid evolution, and I'm making to what we're dealing with every day. And it's like, as soon as I got the notion that they were going that direction, I'm like, okay, cool. Here's how we're going to deal with upper back and neck pain. I go right back into the work itself because there's no need for them to agree with me on evolutionary theory. They need to understand how to help the clients out of pain, but that deeper look helped me understand what I thought or think is going on with clients with upper back and neck pain. It's a key piece of like what I'm teaching, but it's completely different than what I was taught in massage school. Like I basically reinterpreted an industry because of that. And trying to teach it to therapists, they're like, no, but we learned in school. And I'm like, like, if you want to do a massage, it's great. If you want to help people out of pain, you need to like, come on, we can go deeper.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying is obviously treating the wound rather than actually curing the disease. And oftentimes, I think education can only, I guess, answer certain problems in very specific contexts. Usually, a lot of those contexts are like outdated. Um, like, and it's especially bad nowadays, at least, because like education, at least like K through 12, is like super outdated. You learn it's structured. It's literally structured. It was structured by people like Carnegie and Rockefeller to just get a bunch of people like ready for like factory work.
Yeah.
And but and actually this is something I was actually thinking about the other day, is that we got to make like education and schooling, whether it's like for kids or like adults in like graduate programs, whatever it may be, like more interactive. And part of that comes down to the fact that, number one, it'll just make you a better practitioner at whatever you're doing. In your case, when you're doing like massage therapy and whatnot. But number two, it'll allow you to be more innovative, because if you know how to be able to set up a project, you know how to be able to apply a lot of information from different fields and kind of synergize them to be effective, you can actually have control of your life rather than being at the whims of somebody else who's experienced, even though you might have the credentials on paper.
Yeah. The mixing of like, essentially in my world, it was Thai massage and yoga. And then putting those together and then going, what does the science say? That formed the triumvirate of what I was creating. And ever since then, everybody's like, I don't understand. This isn't massage. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Like, okay, cool. All right. looking at an industry, and this includes like, I don't know, electrical work in your house. Like, now I'm not an electrician. I don't know enough about the electricity through the walls, and I'm not even messing with the breaker if I can prevent it. It's like, is it the best way of like wiring a house? I ask questions like that in other fields that I'm not even a part of. And people are like, well, this is the way we've always done it. And I'm like, I didn't really get access to the internet until college when I was 18 years old. Not really. Like, we had chat bots and like, AIM or something, AOL Instant Messenger, just to show my age. Young people now don't know a time before this. The educational system has not kept up at all. When people ask me like, well, where did you learn? I'm like, YouTube.
I definitely do see your point, and I mean, I am one of those guys. I probably since I was maybe about like sixth grade, like I had one of these things in my pocket, for instance, um, and it's gotten especially, I guess, it's changed especially a lot too, since now you have like AI like ChatGPT. You probably know about this, but like you got a whole bunch of people that are basically like using ChatGPT to just do all their homework and write all their papers for school and everything.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, personally, I'm actually an AI enthusiast. I think every individual should be using the best technology suited to enhance their lifestyle. And I like AI. I'm not an AI doomer. I use AI all the time. I'm optimistic about it. I think it's a really cool technology. I think students should be able to use it. But education has to change. Education has to effing change if all it takes for the entire school system to fall apart is one guy typing into, or well, actually millions of kids typing into a AI algorithm that just does their whole work for them without even thinking. That's a flaw in the system.
For massage school, I'm 48 years old. I teach massage therapists continuing education. When I talk to those students and I go, guys, when I went to massage school in 2002, there was no YouTube. They're like, what? And I'm like, there were no video tutorials to like look up online. There is a war going on in my industry, and these phones are verboten. These are not allowed. No. Massage education happens hands-on, the way it's supposed to happen, because it's hands-on discipline. And I go, okay, so we're not going to supplement? Like, I deal with some online education, and people in my industry are like, no, people can't learn online. And I'm like, you mean we can't supplement digitally? Are you sure? Like, it's not to replace, it's the supplement. We're not getting rid of education as it stands. Can we supplement? Can students bring in videos from class that talk about science concepts or talk about chemistry concepts, or, a clip of Bill Nye the Science Guy discussing the same things? Like, a more interactive kind of education. To me, it's not really fundamentally changing the entire foundation of the educational process. But what I see in my industry is they're fighting this tooth and nail. They're like, when I talk to students about social media, and mainly it's because I want them to promote their practices and businesses, they hate social media across the board. Don't even worry about ChatGPT. Once with like I never heard that before, an AI doomer, but like they're not super happy about the tech changes that are going on in the world.
So I want to ask, what about technology? What about social media I guess makes a lot of people in like the massage field, um, like I guess so hostile to it.
Well, I think there's a variety of things, and I'm going to try to say this in the most like eloquent way that I can. One, the people who went into the massage field wanted to have a second job. Like maybe they had a one career, now they're going for a second career. And this is years ago. It's slightly shifted, I think, in demographics since student loans and things like that were introduced. It meant that the number of younger students, the audience continued to age down. They wanted a second career where it was like they did something meaningful, where they connected with people. Okay, so those people now own massage schools, and then they have to deal with millennials and the complaints they have about these people who won't get off their phones. And it's like, I'm in the middle trying to convey information to these young people to help them build modern practices and dealing with the school owners who have made this unavailable. I would go in, for instance, my work in Thai massage initially is clothes on. What I realized was cameras. Oh my God, I can film and photo document everything. This is amazing for social media. Let's go. Everyone went, no, where did all these cameras? And I'm like, I'm going to give you a copy of your class from 4 camera angles. And they're like, no, we don't even allow this. And you're just filming the whole class? And I go, well, yeah. Now, if you run a brick and mortar school, massage is a hands-on discipline. Nobody's going to debate that hands-on is the best way to educate people. How much of those school owners continue to want to supplement digitally? Almost zero. The entire business model is based on real estate and brick and mortar. I saw an opening in the industry with a clothes-on, mat-based discipline that looked completely different, where I could film and photo document everything, and everybody went, we got to get rid of that guy. He's causing problems. He's acting like people can just learn this stuff and do it freely? Yes. Like avoid high price costs and use digital supplementation to change the educational process? Yes. But as with much innovation, it's like, no, we don't want to change. We've always done it this way. And I'm like, this is not good. Like, I don't think you're going to win a battle with the internet, guys. There is a decidedly, I hate to say this, it feels to me in the massage community sometimes, there's a decidedly anti-science and anti-tech backbone to it sometimes. I don't ascribe to it, but it feels like that. And there's a resistance to the deeper questioning. Mainly, somebody who has a brick and mortar school, do they want to compete with me when I have global digital distribution from 4 camera angles? The answer is no, so they've used massage regulation to block what I'm doing. And I'll just give you a quick example. In Texas, I live in Central Texas. I have to drive at least 5 hours to get out of Texas. I cannot offer hands-on instruction online for CE credit. It's completely not allowed. If I ask students why, they're like, what? And I'm like, guys, school owners have passed laws to block what I'm doing because they don't want the competition. Anti-science, anti-tech. That's my stance, as I see it at least. And of course, this is a generalization. Not everybody is in the same, thing, but it's just what I see. And I've learned to go, guys, it's just a supplement. This stays the same. We're going to supplement heavily. I don't know if that answered your question about why they're anti-science or anti-tech, but
Yeah, it seems like it's the case. It seems like it just comes down to people wanting just people just want to be able to protect their traditional practices like the brick and mortar, where if you're older, maybe not talking about you, but if you're like older and you're more resistant to change, and you see all these phones coming out and all of this and all these digital apps and social media coming out, and you're like, well, what the hell, I don't want to like sit and learn this. Let's just make everybody else change rather than I change so that I can still be competitive. But the problem is that the practice can't be better if people can't spread information and learn certain techniques or be able to incorporate, a lot of the biological sciences to their um, massage therapy practices like you're talking about. And in the end, it just sucks for everybody, except for maybe a few people who already have like well established practices.
The the average therapist goes to YouTube and looks up tips and techniques and stuff. Like the supplementation process is going. It's really a question of like, does a brick and mortar school want to continue to supplement and then like pivot to a slightly different business model? I don't argue with people about it. I just went, okay, I literally did this. Like I don't want to say anti-tech because that's not exactly the case. I wasn't as interested in technology at one point. When I started running a business, it was like, we need a Facebook page. We need an Instagram, a YouTube. And I'm like, man, what is all this? And it's like, well, it's not the yellow pages anymore. Like you need to put out information about what you're doing to draw in clients and then to draw in eventually students. So I felt very empowered at a certain point where I was like, I would go into a school and go, yeah, you guys think this is a phone. I think it's a global communication device that connects to all the data on Earth. It also happens to make phone calls. When I had that shift, it was like I went crazy. Well, yeah. Like students will still ask me, they're like, why do you have a podcast? I don't understand. More connections leading to more business, more trust because you're putting out a business on the internet and having more videos, more interest, more fans, more clients, more students led to a bigger, more robust business that allowed me to minimize risk, I would say. It's like I was having more irons in the fire to make revenue in slightly different ways.
Yeah. And honestly, smart on you for overcoming that friction and just starting to do things like podcasting and going on Facebook and YouTube and everything.
Oh, yeah. People think I'm good at this, and I'm like, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, me too. Like, I'm not even kidding you. So, like, the TikTok that I made actually for all of like my accounts of Black Chemist recently, I had never made a post on TikTok before. I vaguely knew about it, obviously, because TikTok is freaking everywhere. But I just sat down one afternoon and I like recorded like a post. It was my first post actually. Kind of sucked, but you should still check it out anyways. And I was just tweaking through. I was like, oh, like this is how you edit videos. And oh, I can add text here and I can do music here if I want. And I could like put it in like a cool filter that makes all of my face, like neon lights instead. I mean, that's a little freaky, but that's kind of cool. And like I didn't really know what I was doing. I just was trying my best. But through that experience, I really, really, like you were talking about how things flipped a switch in your brain. It kind of flipped a switch in my brain where I was like, oh my gosh, I like love TikTok. This is like the best app I've ever used before. I love putting out content. I love coming up with ideas. You know, scrolling can be a little bit addictive, but I do my best to catch it. But all the content out there, it's just fantastic.
Yeah. So, what is it about TikTok for you specifically?
I like the fact that I like the fact that it puts me on a little bit of a timer so I can explain things relatively quickly. It doesn't take that much time to edit because I'm not editing like multiple minute videos. And I just like that it's very, very easy to get the message across. And I like being able to just, I just think that it's a pretty simple software. It's pretty easy to put out videos, and you could just put out so much content.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because I'm active on social media and I've tried stuff on TikTok for the years that I've been on it. Like, I think pre-COVID, I think I started, and then during COVID, it started like blew up, and then you could see TikTok sort of start to influence Reels and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube Shorts and all this stuff, and I'm like, whoa! I had no idea that TikTok was gonna like eat like a section of the marketplace. I don't post a ton on TikTok these days, just because I wasn't getting a lot of traction. And it's such a different platform that I still try to figure out the entertainment value for the information that I put out.
Yeah, definitely. Um, it is definitely unique because I was on the polar opposite of things actually. I actually was for years ago like was more active on like Reddit. So Reddit is obviously long forums. People post long messages with like links and everything. I did that for a little while. Uh, Reddit's nice. It can get a little bit pessimistic. Well, I mean, every social media can, but I find at least on TikTok, things aren't really that pessimistic with what people are posting on my For You page. And in addition to that, I also like showing off myself. I don't like being anonymous. I don't like hiding.
Yeah.
I've always liked showing myself to the world and being able to have an opportunity to really, really do that to, at this point, probably a couple thousand people is just like super cool and super exciting.
Yeah. The evolution that I've seen is so vast. I can't imagine growing up with like TikTok as a base. Like, dude, we had AOL Instant Messenger, and that was like, ooh, you could talk to your friends. like the world has changed so dramatically in my 48 years that I just have a hard time speculating like what's to come. The challenge that I see for massage education is, I'm going to say this as politely as I can. What if they're still teaching the marketing from the yellow pages? The world has changed, and when I take this out and I go, guys, you have to educate people and show people what you do. You need to stand up for the industry and show them what massage therapists do. And they go, no, I don't like social media. It's like, cool, then you leave it open for everybody else to do the education. And it's like, I'm trying to get my students who are working clothes on, mat based, to like film. Now, put out so much video, put out thousands of videos a year, and do it 50, 100 times over, and see what the massage industry eventually looks like. My students can outperform other massage therapists because it's all filmed. You just put your phone on a tripod and record it. You can clip it later. People will buy what they can see. You have a free email list, but if you had a little, I don't know, PDF workbook that you printed out, and you're like, hey, you get my free workbook. Man, when they can see that there's a workbook, like, woo, that's a real thing.
Certainly, definitely.
I mean, I didn't
Go ahead.
I didn't realize that TikTok would become like the home shopping network.
Yeah, seriously. Like TikTok started to become popular, I would say, near the end of my time in high school, which I graduated in spring of 2019. And at that point, there were a couple people I knew that were on it. There was like one girl at my school who had like 100,000 followers. She was kind of insane. But like no one was really people. I heard of it and it was popular, but around the time that like COVID came, and I was at home from like the semester, that's when things like really, really, really blew up.
Yeah.
And I was and at first I was a little bit of an old head. I was kind of like, well, why the heck are you just gonna like waste your time scrolling on this? Like, what even is the purpose of it? It's just a bunch of like it's just a bunch of young girls dancing on it. But TikTok got so big that you necessarily can't say anymore, oh, it's just hot girls dancing. You got adults of all age, you got kids of all age, you got all kinds of content.
There were massage educators who just they didn't like social media to begin with, but they were like, TikTok is trash. And I was like, this trash is about to educate people about what massage is in this century. Like, this is not going away, and it's not about TikTok. Like when they go, I don't like social media. I'm like, you don't like how people communicate in 2025? And they're like, no, I don't like social media. I'm like, you don't like how people communicate in 2025? And they're like, no, I don't like, fuck Facebook and Instagram. I'm like, you don't like how people communicate in 2025? Because that's what it is. We don't use rotary phones anymore. It ain't coming back.
Nor what you wanted back. Like, the last time I was a little kid, the last time I used a landline. Seriously, the last time I used a landline, I was like a sixth grader calling up like my crush like a few blocks away to ask her out. Like, I don't know when my family got rid of it, but yeah, like the landline is gone. I lived in an apartment. There's no landline in my apartment at all, nor would I want one, because what the hell would I do with it?
The internet used to come in the line over the phone.
See, I'm so young. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. There's a sound that the modem would make. It's a screeching kind of thing. Anybody my generation knows it, because you had to somebody would pick up the phone to make a phone call and it would break your internet connection. It's like, that's like, I played Atari as a kid, guys. Like, I'm playing emulator games on my computer and live streaming me playing poker at the same time now. It's like the technology's changed so rapidly. All I did was look at my specific industry, and it wasn't just applying science. It was like, wait a second. We all know that hands-on education is best, but why not supplement heavily? What's the downside of people having access to information? I want them to have more access to information. Now, the mainstream industry, what I see again is there's a push. They're like, no, we got to get rid of this guy. He's causing problems. We don't like the internet. I don't see the printing press going away. It led to the Protestant Reformation. The ongoing growth of technology was okay, I literally sat back at one point, because I was a little bit more of a hippie, if you want to say that. I wasn't quite crazy about technological change. But I got to a point where I was like, man, everything I know about organic gardening came from the internet. Information that would have been passed down from my great-great-great-grandpa to me had been disrupted because of technology, where we didn't all live on farms. I was trying to grow organic vegetables, and I was all over the internet watching videos on how to grow organic vegetables. And it was wait a second, can you apply the technology in a way that boosts the things that you care about? Which for me was body work and food and whatever. I could, but the larger industry, I think, is afraid of losing a foothold. Brick and mortar schools don't want to compete with me when I have global distribution for pennies. The other side of it is there's a sort of conveying status and prestige through like licenses. If you have your PhD, it's like that acronym soup is like very meaningful to people. If you have more acronym soup, that's even more meaningful. They want some of that stuff conveyed, and unfortunately the internet doesn't really tend to do that.
Definitely. And sort of talking about, I actually like to use that term acronym soup. Uh, and I actually think nowadays, at least, one thing at least I'm starting to notice is that things like, I guess, necessarily credentials and acronyms, while they're important, they're less important in my opinion, at least now than they used to be. And like everybody knows about like the common meme of, oh, I have a 3.9 GPA in software engineering from MIT and I can't get a job. Like, because nobody cares, because you never coded for an internship, buddy. You know, you could have a PhD in and this is something actually I figured out, because a little while actually after I left grad school, initially I was kind of like, wow, like I can't believe I couldn't actually do a PhD. But just talking to like some of the people in my field, they're just like, who do have PhDs, they oftentimes had a lot of jobs that I could probably get in maybe about 1 to 3 years without the PhD at all, or I could get like straight away. And just due to the internet and information being more democratized, and people like yourself putting out information for pennies, that allow people to get skills instantly, things like traditional licensing and traditional universities are starting to become a little bit more obsolete, at least for those who are ambitious enough to do something and transform their life.
The value of a degree from a university, I think, continues to go down, and the price of university has continued to go up. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm a big fan of supplementation, which means, okay, yeah, we understand we have this foundation, but like, how do we like build on that? How do you supplement in a way that helps chemistry students understand concepts that like the teacher wants the supplementation in class because they don't have to make the video. Bill Nye's already made the video. We just watched the video with Bill Nye. Now there's a sort of social proof because like here's the Carl Sagan, here's the Neil deGrasse Tyson, here's the E.O. Wilson, here's the other educators talking about these concepts, adding to a larger conversation. It feels like there's more social proof than just the teacher.
Yeah, certainly. The teacher's just one part of the supplementation now. Just like a video is, or just like an article is. The teacher or your professor in your classroom is just fitting one specific source of information that you could seek to figure out something. And it's not inherently good or bad. That's just how technology has changed our world.
Yeah, and I literally looked at it at one point and I'm like, okay, Robert, what's going to happen? Is the internet going to grow or is it going to get smaller? And I was like, if I had to make a bet, I'm going to put all my money on it's going to grow. And I'm like, cool. And that's where your business needs to go. That was almost as soon as I got started. Once I really started running my own business, I was like, then I discovered Gary V and it was all over. Like Gary put the street hustle to the social media in a way that like made complete sense to me and was like a beacon of how I conducted my business for years. Continues to be influential, but if other people resist the technology, I'm like, I'm going to embrace it and push it as far as I potentially can, which basically led to the podcast. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a Gary V guy. I've seen some Alex Hermosi. That I feel like that guy's a little bit more up my alley.
what is it about Hermosi that you like specifically?
I like the fact that Hermosi seems to put out. Hirose seems to be a little bit more modern, and he tends to be a little bit more on the sales side of things, which is kind of like what I want to go into.
Yeah. So I'm an educator. I have the hardest time as a marketer, advertiser, salesman, like trying to package what I'm teaching to get students to want to buy it. Like wearing multiple hats. If I had enough money, I would hire people to solve some of these problems because I feel like me trying to solve it is like causing more issues.
I hear you. I wouldn't say that. I mean, again, you got again, you're just gonna be dwindling and tweaking things when you're figuring things out.
There is a reason people pay coaches or people who already know what they're doing to just do it. I don't really want to reinvent the wheel, but I'm not really, even though I'm inside my industry teaching, all of my business influence comes from outside. It has almost nothing to do with people in my industry. And if I try to discuss it with people in my industry, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, building the business of the future. Like, Alex Hermosi and whoever else, like looking at funnels. You got a workbook or a free, email list thing, like building funnels for like different audiences, for instance. Those are things that I have to think about in terms of bringing students in, and then how is revenue made, and then how do you roll that in with the educational process.
I see. When did you get started in your business?
I think it was right around 2012.
And what drove you want to start your own practice?
So essentially, when you look at my work, and it's a mat-based, clothes-on, came out of Thai massage. It's everybody in massage schools in the West. This is what I see. There's Northern European culture that was sort of implanted as like, this is how things are done, and this is what the law says. My tradition came from Southeast Asia. Totally different cultural background, like totally different. Like I was like, man, because I looked at Thai massage and yoga. Yoga was from India. Thai massage was, of course, from Thailand. And then I looked at the pain science, and when I was weaving those together, it was like, essentially, I was working on a table trying to help people out of pain because I had been in pain. I had a car accident, which caused me to drop out of school. I didn't get a philosophy degree. I didn't get a degree at all. I went to work. The work I wanted to do was mat-based and clothes-on. It was influenced by Thai massage. I was like, I want to do that. And basically, there's no major facility in the United States that would even allow a therapist to work on a mat. It's not allowed. No. We hire people here to do massage. We don't know what this crap is. You got to get out of here with that. So I had to work for myself. Then it's like, okay, I remember very distinctly going, okay, a plumber. A plumber solves a very specific problem that's a code red. You have water in your house, like there's sewage. The plumber has to come fix it. The plumber can work for Roto-Rooter, but the plumber can also like work completely for themselves. They make a decent living. Plumbers are necessary. Like I deal with chronic pain. It's not exactly the same thing, but like it's physical labor. I help people. How does the plumber get clients? And the plumber essentially helped people with their plumbing, fixed their plumbing, got testimonials, built a website, some basic infrastructure, and built a lot of word of mouth. Then I'm like, okay, I want to be successful like a plumber. How do I do that? And it was like, the same students who tell me they hate social media, I go, cool, where'd you find me? And they're like, God damn it. We saw some video. And I'm like, it's like $400, $400, $400, $400. But there's no direct line between I made a video and I got paid. Essentially, for me to get my dream, which is like, okay, can I, as an artist, a bodywork artist, can I build enough of a practice, have enough clients, have enough students, have enough materials, have enough online, have enough supplementation to build like a good living and then like continue to grow? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And I've struggled and I continue to struggle to continue doing that. But the reason I have my own business is because no facility would allow me to do what I was doing. They were just like, no, this is, go ahead, tell me it's not massage. This is not massage. And it was like, okay, you guys have fun. I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm trying to lead a bunch of guys. It feels like, you familiar with the Pirate Bay?
No.
So the Pirate Bay, when streaming came out, like Napster and all that, the Pirate Bay, you could go and like torrent video games and movies and all kinds of illegal shit. And the guys who were running the Pirate Bay were having like servers in other countries to avoid regulations, and they eventually got in a lot of legal trouble and whatever else. I feel like the Mad Pirate Roberts, leading a bunch of massage therapists who were anarchists off on a pirate ship, were like, we're going to take this shit over. Which is also why people are a little afraid, because if I'm successful, it kind of breaks down that foundational educational structure they're familiar with. Fundamentally, I just knew this. If I can't build a successful business, then I'm not going to be able to really do the art that I want to do. So I had to become good at business. I had at least enough to be able to continue maintaining.
All right. I appreciate that. Honestly, as somebody who's currently starting out my own business right now, it seems to be a little bit easier than I thought. Again, using this thing, you realize how many websites and how many websites and how many services are out there that actually like help you set up things. Because I was like, oh, how the hell does anyone build a website? And it's like, I'm building it right now, and it's like free and it's easy. Like, oh, how do people like create like donation pages and sign up
Patreon.
pages?
Yeah.
And it's just like it's all on here, and it really doesn't take that much time. You just have to put in the effort.
And it's like, and I want to be as clear about this as I can. People will look at like all the workbooks I've made and stuff I've done, and they'll look at the podcast. They're like, man, how did he do that? Like, they're floating in a photo with the James Webb Telescope thing. How the fuck did he do that? And it's like day after day after day after day of YouTube searches and tutorials and Google searches. And if you want to run the business that you really want, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to learn how to do things you don't know how to do. Your ability to learn and relearn and like revisit information is like a huge resource. If I can get somebody who's got the spirit, you can learn anything. If you have the desire and you go, they're like, how did you learn how to edit videos? I'm like, I went to YouTube and I went, how do I? And some kid in England, 19 years old with a hoodie, showed me how to use Shotcut. I wrote the dude on Twitter. I'm like, hey man, thanks for your tutorial. And he's like, yeah man, fist bump, It's like all the videos that I've edited came from Shotcut. It's free open source software. The only reason I know about it is just from doing basic searches. If I could tell anybody who's running a business, it's like you do it the same way you eat a whale, one bite at a time. If you can just be fastidious and tenacious and just continue to like, well, how do I do this? And you chip away at it day after day after day. It's the same way you get in shape. You got to do the push-ups.
Yep. Coming from somebody right now who's currently getting back in shape.
No, I'm not. My shape is becoming round. So for you, because you're dealing with education, like what do you see yourself doing? Like I heard sales for like certain equipment. What do you think is like to come in the coming years for you?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I don't have like a big long-term strategy. One thing that that I really, really like doing in general is I really like being able to basically build and own my own projects that help people in certain ways. And the reason I found grad school unfulfilling was that I was working on projects, yes, but I was working on projects for my advisor that I wasn't quite that passionate in, and I didn't have the opportunity to directly benefit from. And so the reason why, at least I wanted to go into sales in particular, it actually has nothing to do with the fact that sales happens to be like high earning. I actually didn't even like know that. What happened is that I was meeting with a career advisor, and he like gave me this like career questionnaire to fill out, where you like answer like 100 questions that are related to like your values, what you could see yourself doing in a career, and like where your skills are and everything. And I answered it truthfully, and at the top I happened to get sales, and that shocked me. I didn't even know that like science focused sales was even like a job or like a field that people did. So I just happened to, and so then I started reading some articles. I started talking to people on like LinkedIn, learning a little bit more about like the actual job. And I realized like, holy cow, this is like literally a dream come true. I get to just like travel around like the country, and I get to be able to like talk to different people, learn about the projects they're working on, approach people with ideas of a particular like instrument or equipment that could like fix their issues. Like the money to me is just like a secondary.
Yeah.
Yes, I do care about how much money I make, but I'd rather do something that's like really, really fun, and pays like average or maybe even slightly above average than do something that's like super high paying, like finance or software that would probably bore me to death. So
Most entrepreneurs that I've talked to, it's a very key theme that it's like money is how you keep score and you need money to reinvest and do stuff. But the money is just a tool. Their real motivation is in something transformative
mhm,
to create
makes sense.
the thing that doesn't exist. I have a vision, and it's like, yeah, like that excitement, dude. When I talk to people who just like, oh, I have to go to work, and I'm like, I don't even remember what that shit was like. Like this is my work now. This is part of my social media. This has nothing to do with body work specifically. Like, but I spend countless hours doing stuff like this because it's all part of the ongoing brand building process. They think it's like money, and it's like, nah, the money is like, I mean, there's bills to pay. I don't want to have to look for money for the bills. But after that, I'm like, no, I want to go where my dreams are.
Me too. And hopefully I'll get there, in enough time.
Do you have an idea of like what you're going to be selling?
Yeah. So there's a lot of like I was saying before, I'm an analytical chemist. Uh, I have a lot of experience dealing with a lot of methods that like detect certain like compounds and everything. And there's a lot of really sophisticated, hardware and what we call instruments that are designed to where you put your sample into an instrument, and the instrument will you know and the instrument will generate some kind of signal when it shines like a ray at it. And essentially I have a lot of experience working with a lot of those types of instruments and research. And basically there's a pretty big demand right now for people getting into like those type of fields and that have experience working on those things, and just finding a way to locate researchers and tailor them basically like an instrument or like a piece of equipment that could be like, hey, you could use this in research. This is the type of compounds that it could detect. Here's how you use the software. Here's how you turn the thing on, fix it, etc. And that to me just sounds really, really cool. Personally, probably a little bit more than the pure science.
Is it the application that's more interesting?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge abstract thinker, so probably not the best philosopher, but
Yeah, my ability to like take something and extrapolate. Like I've told people many times that my business, the average therapist will look at what I'm doing and go, "This doesn't make any sense." And it's like in the short term, my behavior looks weird because I'm almost like going the opposite direction. Everybody works on a table, I work on a mat. Everybody works on naked people, I work clothed. My goal is I can see it off on the mountaintop way out there. But in the short term, it's like this doesn't make any sense. And it's like you're not looking at where I'm trying to go. Like I want a radically different practice, and I want to be able to get students to create their own radically different practices with my assistance.
I
If I
see.
was
So teaching students how to essentially find proper, I guess, teaching students how essentially to do um, proper meditate, or I guess not proper meditation, but uh, proper. You might need to finish my sentence for me. My
massage,
brain is blinking. Yes, proper massage.
and it's so, man. So there's a suspension that I use, and it's just some equipment that I use to be able to like do double footed compressions. This is the fringe of the fringe of the fringe in the bodywork community. People see a photo and they're like, "So you just stand on people?" And I'm like, I'm doing body work using my legs and feet. It's akin to teaching Brazilian jiu-jitsu to an industry full of boxers. They only have arms, an uppercut. They can't use their legs and feet. And I'm like, we're going to change that. I want you to use your whole body. The suspension, the students will see it and they're like, fuck, man, Jesus Christ, this guy, damn, he just keeps changing everything. And they go, is anybody doing research on this? And I'm like, are they researching hippies standing on people? No. The research money goes to OxyContin, guys. It's like looking at massage, and I mean this in the most pure way I can. I got into alternative health because the mainstream medical community just threw me overboard. They basically said, we ran scans, you have no broken bones, good luck. I was 22. I was like, if I'm in this much pain, I'm going to wind up knocking over liquor stores to buy drugs. Like, this is not sustainable at all. Horrible pain problems, but they wouldn't give me pain medication because you'll get addicted to it. Now, I reversed most of that and worked on myself using things like yoga and Thai massage and blending and mixing and matching and looking at the pain science. Now I'm teaching students to have these sorts of practices, but what I started to get was, like, you came to the Thai massage jam, you kind of saw what people were doing and what I was teaching them to do and assisting the public getting involved to learn how to work on each other. My own colleagues would come and get a session. It would last like 3 hours. They would get up and just like freak out and go, what the fuck is this? Like, I'm like, whoa, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, man, I feel great. Like, I feel amazing, but I don't understand. This is not massage. And I'm like, oh shit. I basically do this currently. I'm like, guys, is this the best solution to a pain management problem? And they're like, no, I can't deal with pain management. I'm a massage therapist. And I'm like, so massage therapy doesn't help pain? And they're like, no, you keep changing language. And I'm like, I have to change language to shake you out of your torpor. In the same way that Neil deGrasse Tyson and Carl Sagan and E.O. Wilson have to communicate science in a way that the bus driver can understand it, to be able to bring the bus driver along. Like, listen, I don't think massage, as it is currently taught in massage schools and performed at large chain franchises, is the best answer for the clients or the therapists. What I teach is optimally effective for clients in chronic pain and effortless for the therapist. This is next level pain relief. Let's go. Whether or not they define it as their art form, it's a little bit like when I was a youngster, NWA was dangerous. NWA in the 80s, when I was going to elementary school, was rap, and it was gangster rap, and they put gangster rap on the map, and it was dangerous. And then there was like rock and roll, like Aerosmith. And then all of a sudden it was like Walk This Way. Like Run DMC did a mashup with Aerosmith. And it was like those worlds started to collide. Where now it's not a big deal. There's all kinds of music. Like post Napster, everything changed because people had access, and it was like, is it country? Is it rap? Is it rock? It's like, if I want to make white people really uncomfortable, I start asking them if Little Nas X, Old Town Road, is that a country song? And they're like, it's like the evolution has happened in the music industry. It has not happened in the massage industry. Things will continue to evolve and change. I just threw my hat in the ring to say, listen, I think we need to go this way. I think we need to supplement heavily and continue to expand what the potential is. But to have the colleagues in your industry say, no, this isn't what we do. And I'm like, oh, maybe not yet. I'm one guy. There's no brick and mortar. I'm one guy. Like, I can teach it. I'm not told it's ineffective. I'm just told this isn't, go ahead. This isn't what we were taught in school. And I'm like, yeah, I went to public school in Louisiana. I don't believe 90% of what I was taught in school. I have access to the internet. I do my own research. And when it comes to history in particular, you lied. Not only was the education bad, you outright avoided controversial topics, which in American history is quite problematic, I think.
Yeah, certainly. I think for the most part, most fields are starting to catch up. Obviously, you're part of that new wave of people getting really, really pushing massage, and then you'll have a whole bunch of people who are like, no, 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 you can't do it this way. You can't bring this thing in, that thing in, etc. But like, even on my TikTok posts, when I explain like a scientific principle that explains, oh, well, wow, like that's why, you know, I don't know, like that's how refrigerators get cold, for example. Like there's a whole bunch of detail I'm purposely leaving out, and I do change up the wording a little bit to explain it, but the principle is still the same.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to adapt, innovate, and sort of translate things depending on the type of audience that you have. Because whatever you learn initially, whether it's in massage school, whether it's in grad school, whether it's in some sort of course, you're going to get the most fluffed up academic jargony language possible because, you know, these people are weird and want to be that way.
Yeah.
But when you talk to normal people, you have to learn to be able to tone that down, because if you try to sound smart and nobody understands you, you're just stupid.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to think. I felt like a mechanic who fixed a car in a way that other mechanics said, that's not being a mechanic. And I'm like, but the car is fixed. And they're like, yeah, but there's a weird thing that happens with massage culture in the West where they've boxed it in on a table. It's like that piece of architecture is completely shaping the way certain things are done, and the same way that having access to a microscope, having access to a telescope, like expanded the potentials in science, where you had certain tools available and those tools changed what happened. You know, the James Webb Telescope, I was so excited to see it launch. Like, Voyager 1 launched, I think, in 77, the year I was born. And I remember reading, this was like 5 years ago. I remember reading about Voyager, and they're like, yeah, they put a record. Carl Sagan helped determine what music went on. Like, they sent a copy of like Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good out into space. And I'm like, a record? I'm like, why the fuck would they send a turntable out into space? That doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, dude, it was 1977. Like, a record was the technology at the time. Now you'd send an MP3 player because we have different technology. But it's like, dude, this launched, like, this object is the furthest out in space of anything that's ever been made by humanity. It's still, to my knowledge, communicating back to Earth. But it's like, it started so long ago, the year I was born, that like they sent a record out into space in case an alien life form, encountered it and wanted information about Earth.
Sorry, I'm just thinking right now, actually. Have they launched a new probe out into space, NASA? I thought they launched something that went to like Mars. I don't know if
I'm not completely aware of what else has been done, because there was Voyager 1 and then I think Voyager 2. I'm not sure what else has been done, but when they launched the James Webb Telescope, I was just like, because it's transforming, astrophysics.
Yeah. And that's weird that you said that they launched a telescope. I didn't even know that was like possible.
They got James Webb in this one spot, and it's like it kind of moves away and back in a certain orbit, but it's just big enough and just the right settings to be able to pull in light, without any atmospheric disturbance. And it's like just this window into the cosmos. Like, I mean, you're talking physics geekery till the end of time. Like, so massively amazing. And it's the fruition of a million scientists doing research in a lab around massive specificity. I think, like, just like maniacal focus on isolating a variable to understand what was going on.
Certainly. Since you've been talking a little bit, I was talking a little bit about science and talking about what essentially is, I guess, real time massage or real science or real whatever it may be. A thing that might oftentimes get overlooked is people sometimes might spend a little bit too much time doing what's popular, trying to chase prestige, I would say. Mm-hmm. And an example of something that I was thinking about, and I'm sure there's likely a Thai massage analogy to this too, is that when I was coming up with ideas of how I wanted to put together things like my newsletter and put together things like like putting together like private coaching and everything like that, I just went on Google and I went to like the 5th page of Google, just looking at examples of graduate school, science, newsletter, and coaching. And so many of the sites that I saw were just so heavily, so heavily like elitist. It was like, we're going to get you into the best programs. We're going to get you into Stanford and Harvard and MIT. And I got this whole team of people who were admissions counselors that went to Harvard and Stanford and all of this. But the thing that I feel like a lot of them were missing was that nobody was answering the important question: how do you find a program that's right for you? Because a school being a top school, it's like, what does that necessarily mean? Is that top in terms of endowment? Is that top in terms of student body? Is that top in terms of average GPA that's there? And in my personal experience, actually, when I was looking at graduate programs, I actually was just trying to find things that aligned with my research interest, and I would find professors first who align with those interests, and then apply to the school later.
Yeah.
which I found to be more fulfilling for me. But a lot of people, at least, seem to place so much value on credentialism, which, thank goodness, it's dying now. It's dying a little bit in science. From what you said, not really so much for Thai massage, but it'll probably get there eventually.
Yeah,
And
the credentialing and licensing of massage is like exceedingly complex.
yeah, and I'm sure all those people who put those laws into place as they die, that probably start to change. But really, I guess I think it's more important for people to find out whether something is right for them. Because believe it or not, I have a friend who's a physicist, and he says that ASU, yes, ASU is like one of the best astronomy programs in the entire country. Comes as a little bit of a shocker because people think of ASU as a big party school, which it is, but you know, you'll find, but if you look for opportunities and things that are well suited for things that you're passionate are about, you're going to find a lot of great opportunities in unconventional areas.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of this. If somebody wanted to be a chef, they're kind of like, well, how do I go apply to the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America? And I'm like, no. You go interview 10 chefs. You get 10 chefs and say, listen, I'll take you out to a meal wherever you want to go. I need to sit and talk about being a chef. I'm thinking about going to culinary arts. I want to learn how to be a chef. You interview 10 chefs. Find out what their life is like, find out what their living is like, find out what the work is like, or even go further, go work in kitchens. Now you're determined about whether you're going to spend that money going to the Culinary Institute of America. Well, I want to go into the physics graduate. Cool. You need to go find some physics graduate students and interview them. Massage therapists, go find 10 massage therapists and interview them. Go to the source, because there's things that go along with, like, if you just look at being a chef as like, oh, you get to wear the fancy hat and make the great food. It's like, no. You're in a hot kitchen with a bunch of angry guys with knives on drugs. Like the dishwasher smoking weed in the back or whatever it is with Tony Bourdain. It's like when you interview somebody and you get a chance to find out what it's actually like, you can figure out if that branch of engineering is the thing that you really want to go into.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And yeah, and actually, I'm really glad you brought up that point because the other day, actually, like I was just scrolling through TikTok because TikTok is so freaking awesome, and I was like going and I like found a post where somebody was just like, comment below why you decided to study engineering, and a lot of the posts, it was sad, but a lot of the responses weren't things. Most of the responses are things like, "Oh, money," or "Oh, I wanted to show that women could be engineers," or "Oh, I wanted to, I didn't want to feel like I'm such an idiot," or whatever. And very few people are like, "Oh, I talked to so and so," or "I worked on this cool project," or I got to, see what it's like being an engineer day in the life, and I really, really enjoyed it. But it was a lot of selfish reasons, and that doesn't mean you necessarily can't be successful. But how could you be happy doing something out of pride and going into a program out of pride rather than coming out of just natural curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about massage, because that's my industry, massage therapists will go to local school and take a tour, and they talk about the program in the school, and we get you licensed, and that's great. I mean, I don't want the school to not do that, but I really feel like massage therapists would get so much more if they interviewed 5 to 10 therapists, private practice, work somewhere else, find out what their life is like, and go, is this really what I want to do? Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree. Um, but people aren't discouraged. But people are like almost discouraged, or not necessarily led in that direction. They're just led, oh, do this thing because it's the next option, rather than, hey, have you ever considered talking to some people that you know, or networking online, or actually meeting people who are in the job or the field that you want to get an idea of whether you want to do this. And you might learn about a different opportunity that's out there that you didn't even know existed that'd be a better fit for you.
Yeah.
Which is what happened with me, essentially.
There are so many angles and avenues that I think it's confusing, especially when people kind of want a predetermined course, a predetermined path. Like in my business, I feel like I've got a machete. I'm hacking my way through the jungle, and I'm like, come on, guys, we can build a movement. We're going to hack our way through the jungle. And they're like, can you just pave this shit and then I'll ride on it? Entrepreneurship is that thing with the in the jungle hacking away to like create the new vision. And there's not always a real direct like line. I don't think Bill Nye the Science Guy thought he would, I'll do a crazy TV show and whatever. I don't think Alton Brown went to culinary arts and thought I'd do a crazy TV show called Good Eats. It's like your job will probably take twists and turns you can't foresee. And I think also the advent of the internet and technology distribution the way we have it has just completely transformed the potential pathways.
Yeah, certainly. That would be a little amazing, though, if like Gordon Ramsay just woke up one day and just figured, you know what? I'm going to start a TV show yelling at people and trying people's food, even though I'm the best chef in the world and I could make it right now.
Yeah. Do you follow food at all?
No, not really.
Yeah. Like there's a documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi, and Jiro Ono is like this master sushi chef. If anybody mastered sushi, it was Jiro. And Jiro set the goddamn standard so high that like you don't get a job with Jiro. You apprentice with him. And your first job is probably to clean toilets for a year. Like you won't touch rice for like 3 or 4 years. Like this shit is so like samurai, Japanese, like military, just, I mean, whew, good Lord. And I looked at what they were doing and I'm like, Jiro, install cameras through the entire restaurant and like film the patrons and film the staff. And when you clean the mackerel, show them how you're cleaning the mackerel, and you'll make more money selling the footage of you doing that shit than you will from selling sushi. But it's that sort of thing where Alton Brown, I don't think, really made his money with food. He made money from a show. Like Gordon Ramsay, I think he said. Like he probably made more money from selling a show than he did from the food itself.
Absolutely.
The entertainment value. What do you see on your TikTok content? What do you think you're going to be doing next?
So what I'm going to be doing next is, well, right now I'm kind of trying things out a little bit. So I've done some content. So most of my content that I've done is sort of me just sort of explaining like basic, some of the science behind like everyday basic stuff. I explored a little bit. I made like a pretty goofy, like, this is your STEM major based on your personality sort of thing. For fun. And then somebody asked me to like do like a homework problem, so that I did that one. I think I'd like to stick around the sort of explain basic science stuff, at least for now, because I actually enjoy that content the most. What I eventually want to eventually somewhat pivot into doing is more so telling people about things like, certain grant opportunities or certain like programs or internships that either I like had done or I was aware of, and bring attention to them for that. I know that's a little bit more of a little bit more of a niche market. Mm-hmm. But I didn't quite want to jump into that type of content yet, because I wanted to at least build a little bit of a platform first, talking about some of the more broad, simple stuff, which I still really do enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, if I could say anything entrepreneurially, go with what you enjoy and then just figure out a way to find people to make money doing it. You'll put more of your time and energy into it, and I think it has a higher degree of success.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in consideration then.
Yeah. Forcing yourself to go into food chemistry when you're like, I don't want to talk about food. Like, don't do that.
Stop talking about food then. Eat it.
Yeah, there's. Oh man, I just don't. There's so much available now where you can. If there was any time for niche, it's now. Like you can go into stuff that's so specific where it's like somebody does a podcast about the Smurfs. Like just stuff that I would never, and I'm like, do people, and I'm like, yeah, this guy just sat down and watched the Smurfs for years and he's obsessed with the Smurfs and the Smurfs this and the Smurfs that. And it's like, there's an audience. It's like, have you seen Hot Ones where they have people on and they eat spicy chicken wings?
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's like, is it a podcast? Is it a show? Is it a film? Like, it's like mixing things in a way that I had never seen before. Because if you just had a thing where you eat hot chicken wings, you're like, so what? But if you have like celebrities on and they're talking about their careers while they're choking down hot wings, it becomes entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, different ways of looking at that. Like I said, my students sometimes are like, why do you have a podcast? And I'm like, because I like to talk to interesting people.
As you should, honestly. Be fun to do. I don't know when I'd start. Right now, right now, I think I'd rather focus a little bit more on social media stuff before pivoting a little bit too much.
And then what kind of, other than TikTok, what kind of social media stuff do you want to focus on?
So I also have Instagram, but Instagram I mainly use to repost the TikToks as reels. I think eventually I'd want to pivot over to YouTube because YouTube's a pretty big audience, and I use YouTube a whole lot.
Yeah.
So
I don't
that
know,
would be really fun.
I don't know metrics on like shorts on YouTube, but YouTube has been better for long form content. Because of the way people interact where they're searching Google or looking for something, like it's I don't know. I can post 2-hour videos on YouTube. I don't tend at this point to do that on Facebook.
What length do you go for Facebook?
We found over time that there was more interest in short form content, but it's also because it's bodywork and massage related. So it's like showing a technique and like clipping something that I made years ago and then putting that together in a way. But I've also not cracked the entertainment variable for massage and bodywork. Like I get some therapists who pay attention, but I don't have anything that's like the public picks it up and runs off with it and comments on it. My work is remarkably unsexy. And one of the things that the massage industry is up against is everybody's naked. So it's like, oh my God, there was an amazingly hot girl getting a massage or whatever. It's that titillation kind of thing that my work, because it's clothed, doesn't deal with. In one way, it's not very flashy, but I can film and photo document everything because they have clothes on. I can put longer videos up, and they do tend to do a little better on YouTube, especially if I have some that include like continuing education credits, things like that. But short form content is mainly to like draw people in to longer form content. I don't ever think I've figured it out in terms of social media. Like it's always this evolving thing. If I hit a formula that worked, I would continue making content like that probably. But I diversified into a podcast. I play poker online. I have a cooking show. I play video games and then do liquor tastings and beer tastings, and I'm mixing stuff. I'm starting to separate what I call the vice channels, which is all the drinking and poker and gambling and whatever. And then the bodywork related videos are going on separate channels. But it was mainly because I had therapists who were like, why not? I signed up for bodywork videos and I keep getting poker videos. Why is this here? The way people use the platform, like LinkedIn, radically different. Radically different. Yeah. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, like totally different platforms in terms of like the user interface.
Yeah, certainly. The thing that surprises me a lot, at least, pivoting from YouTube to TikTok, based on what you're saying about how people use platforms radically different, is that if I went on like my Explore for You page, I might find a post that's got like 2 million views. I'm like, wow, that's really good. I'll click on the account, and the average amount of views they get, like, wilds verily. Like, there's a very, very steep, or there's a very, very, broad distribution. Like, you'll find videos that got like 5,000 views. Like, 5,000 views when you got like a million view video.
Mm-hmm.
Others that got like 100,000. Some that might even have less than 1,000. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it especially compared to like YouTube, where the subscribers are far more loyal.
Yeah, there's something I've seen that I'll mention briefly, but I used to make videos with other channels, and I won't mention the name, but they had a really massive YouTube following in the massage related area. So I made videos with them for a long time, and they had, I don't know, they had 1 million followers or something. Like, I knew that hundreds of thousands of people would see videos that I made through their channel. And the entire conversation, it was like, how do we make more YouTube ad revenue? And I was like, what? And it's like, well, YouTube is like decreasing the amount of ad revenue from our videos. And I'm like, you got to sell them a product or a service. And they're like, nah, but we just want more YouTube ad revenue. And I'm like, ooh, I don't think this is going to go well. Like, you're monetized on TikTok and like the TikTok fund, or, whatever. I mean, it's awesome if you've got it. Don't eschew money. At the same time, I remember having a conversation with some influencers at a party, and these people were young. I'm 48. They're in their 20s. This was it before TikTok? Well, no. Anyway, I can't remember if it was pre or post COVID, but anyway, when I talked to these young people, they were, okay, I made this video on TikTok. It got 5 million views. How do I make money? And I'm like, sell them a product or a service. And they're like, yeah, but it got like 5 million views. How do I make money? And I'm like, oh my God. Guys, virality in and of itself doesn't generate revenue. It has to be, you got a dog face 420 or whatever, you know what I'm talking about, on TikTok? The guy who did the video where he's on a skateboard drinking, not Capri Sun, it was Ocean Crest, I think.
Sounds like a couple people.
Cranberry juice. Like, basically, this TikTok went absolutely, completely viral. There was a Stevie Nicks song, Fleetwood Mac connected to it. The Fleetwood Mac song re-hit the fucking charts because everybody remembered the song. Like, this guy, the next thing I know, he's like going through Cane's on a skateboard, like getting food. He had merch deals and like, was doing ads for other companies and whatever. But he had to build on top of that virality from that one video. And that's where I would encourage people to make content and test. But in the end, it's still kind of like what grandpa and grandma did. You built a product or a service and you communicated with people about it. That's all. It's just a different form of, communication. I think one of the tricks I've seen with younger people is what they were asking me was like, well, but if I get all these views, why am I, like, if I had $1 from the 5 million views, and I'd have $5 million. And I'm like, you have to give them a product or a service. Millions of people have seen me in a video doing some massage. How many clients did I get this week because of it? because views don't translate into dollars. Like you have to have a funnel as a product or service to like get people in. And I built my business, frankly, off of a free workbook and an email list at a time when that was, me being brilliant, I guess. But it's like, do people check emails now? How's email marketing doing? It's like younger people are asking for text message marketing, and then Facebook marketing, and then Messenger marketing, and then SMS, and. I think in some ways the older generation is actually a little bit better at selling products and services with this because they understand the sales process. I feel like something has happened with younger people where they're, well, I got a viral video, why don't I have money? And it's like, guys, you have to sell them something. And they're like, well, how do we make something people want to buy? And I'm like, that's a good question. You need to solve a problem. Somebody got a problem somewhere. How are you going to solve it? It's like the Hot Ones, I think is the name of the podcast. People want to be entertained and they want to watch rich people eat hot wings, whoever's on their show. It's entertainment. Seeing comedians have podcasts very commonly now. And then if your podcast is big enough, you're advertising other companies and generating ad revenue from the podcast. This stuff continues to transform, and I was a little disheartened to see younger people not understand the bigger picture of like the business itself. Just because you get 1 million views, it's awesome. I mean, great. I'm glad that you went viral, but like you have to have a product to be able to sell people, or a service to sell people, or to be able to continue expanding. So for me, do I teach classes in Austin? Yes. But what happens if somebody in Arkansas sees a TikTok I did and says, hey, do you still teach stuff like online? I'm like, yeah, here's a link to my membership. You can join it. Now you've traversed geography, but you have to have something to be able to sell them or package for them. And you frankly have to like outperform. Like, who provides more value? I think about this all the time in business. Do you like Amazon, like as a business?
Ethically, not really, but I mean, they have a very nice business model.
Yeah, I wish I would have thought of it, but it's like the thing that always gets me is I have my own history of how I began shopping with Amazon and how that worked, but it was like people I hate Jeff Bezos, fuck Amazon, hate Amazon, hate Amazon, hate Amazon. Everybody's got Amazon packages on their front stoop. And I'm like, okay, so we understand that they don't like it, but like, why are they still buying from Amazon? And the only thing I could come up with was like quicker, better, faster, cheaper, more accessible. Like, when I started, did I buy toothpaste on Amazon? I'm like, no, man, I just pick up toothpaste when I go to the store. Why would I order toothpaste on Amazon? And then you realize, am I going to price shop a quarter for toothpaste? A quarter difference. Maybe it is more expensive on Amazon. It's a quarter. If I can shop between 50 kinds of toothpaste and just click a button and it's going to arrive tomorrow. I don't even have to put it on my grocery list. Quicker, better, faster, cheaper, more accessible. I would get so much hate in my own industry because of what I'm doing online, and you can't supplement whatever. No, Robert, listen to your own advice. Quicker, better, faster, cheaper, more accessible. If you continue doing those 5 things, it is going to crush the industry. Other educators are not going to be able to compete with you on price when you've done the following: quicker, better, faster, cheaper, more accessible. And it doesn't matter what they think about you when you live on a yacht. I don't think Jeff Bezos cares one iota what the neighbor thinks about his business model. There's more opportunity than ever, but I see a lot of frustration from people about I don't know. They feel like stuff isn't available, if that makes sense.
I kind of know what you're talking about, but elaborate.
There's something about the prescribed path. Like I'm trying to figure out how do I put this together like cohesively so it makes like it's cogent and has like a logical path. But in America, the path to like success in American life was like you get enough money and you buy a home. And then you own the home for 30 years and then you sell the home and then you take your cash and you retire or whatever. That path for home ownership is so drastically changed that I'm 49 years old and I rent because I can't afford to own. Those things are changing, so there's a lot of like anger and I think animosity from people about it being different than it used to be. And it's not because I can't critique capitalism or can't critique the current economic landscape or how things run or it's not fair or this and that. But I still feel like because of this, there's more opportunity than ever, not less. Like as much as people complain about, social media, whatever, I'm like, cool, do you want to live 100 years ago? Unless you're Amish, I don't know anyone anywhere who's like, yeah, I want to go back to how it was 100 years ago. It was so much better then. I mean, unless you're the Unabomber, and you've eschewed technology to the point where you think it needs to be, taken down. There's more opportunities than ever, but there's more capacity to complain.
And competition.
Well, what is competition?
I'd say the number of people that all want the same opportunity.
I mean, is somebody doing something in science sales really like taking a piece of your pie?
I guess not directly.
There was a weird thing because I feel like the technology is just creating more pies.
I see that's actually a really good analogy.
It's like, I mean, and I'm totally willing to dig into this. It's just, I think the prescribed path, kind of like we've always done it this way. I feel like as that prescribed path is breaking down because people have so much access to information, the going from point A to point B is a little more circuitous. It's like curvy. It's a wandering, meandering river instead of like, well, I go get this degree, now I'm a doctor. I think that has changed, but I still feel like there's more potential than in past generations. There's less roadblocks, not more. Or I don't know. Maybe I'm too pro tech at this point. I don't know. Maybe it does turn out to be like the Terminator and the Matrix,
Yeah, I guess what I mean by more competition being that, like, if you wanted to go down if you wanted to play a more passive role in life, and that's if you just want to play a passive role, which is, finish high school, maybe you go to college, get a job, and move up the ladder and get a house like that. That lifestyle, that much more traditional passive lifestyle, is much more competitive now than it used to be. But if you're ambitious, the whole world is yours. But the thing is that most people are passive. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but that's just true. No matter where you go, the mean is always going to be more passive. And those people.
I don't want to step on people in the Rust Belt or like states where manufacturing was big, but like people had jobs in manufacturing and those jobs were stable for many years. Did people love their jobs?
I actually don't know. I truthfully don't know the answer.
Well, I feel this is to me, this is a big divide. There's probably one of the biggest divides I can think of is the actual upper 1% and the rest of us. That's a divide. And then somebody who has a job and an entrepreneur. That divide is so big that I can't even fathom getting up and like going to work for someone else to like just do what I'm told to do. Like I left that behind at some point to try, come hell or high water, to do my own business and make something better. I feel like there's more options for that than ever, but it's like, I'm not saying that people don't need consistent, stable income, which we know that like manufacturing jobs provided across the United States. One, I don't think those manufacturing jobs are coming back. And two, I don't think people were they fulfilled because of their jobs? Did it feel meaningful? Or did it just feel like they were a cog in a machine?
Quite literally.
And it's like, I'm not making judgments. It's like if people, my family came from, my dad's side of the family got out of Virginia because they didn't want them working in the coal mines. And it's like, there's different kinds of manual labor jobs. But the thing that I see with entrepreneurs, and one of the reasons I like talking to them so much, is they're alive. They have a dream. And a dream is like, dude, it feels like the Red Sea parted. If I'm at a party and some guy's got a dream, I'm like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to have a podcast about the Smurfs. I'm like, podcast about the Smurfs coming up. It's like, and it's not even about the money. It's like, I love the joy and the sparkle in somebody's eye when they have an idea and like, I want to go do that. And I'm like, yes. And part of the way some people figure that out is you do stuff you don't like. Like I worked in a couple kitchens. I thought about going into culinary arts and I was like, nah, dude, it's going to be, You've worked in kitchens, man. The first time somebody comes in with lactose intolerant, you're going to lose your mind. Like they got some food allergy. There's more opportunities than ever. So if you're a cook, you can open a food truck. Do barbecue places in Austin feel like they're competing with the barbecue places? They're still opening new ones. Like barbecue is massive here in Texas. Where did you move, by the way?
I moved back to a town called Naperville. That's just outside of Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. And then, like, do Chicago restaurants feel like they're battling with other restaurants?
Not really. Just adding more pies.
It's like Starbucks. Did Starbucks destroy local coffee shops?
No.
And it's like, I don't know, man. There's something about that. I mean, some guy who geeks out about coffee. You ever watch coffee videos on TikTok?
Yes, I have.
Oh, dude. There's dudes who've crafted art. And I'll sit there for a minute and watch them make an espresso with all this crazy contraption and equipment. It looked like something out of Breaking Bad. And it's not brewing coffee. It's an extraction. And I go, that thing, like, I don't want it every day, but it's like I would go to a local coffee shop where a barista gave me a class comparing coffees, talking about preparation methods and the chemistry involved in caffeine from coffee beans. That experience you can't buy at Starbucks. To me, it was always the food thing at the food trucks. It's like some chef with a dream who's like, fuck this kitchen, brick and mortar, whatever, we got a truck. We're gonna make Cuban sandwiches. Whatever their dream was, that stuff, that just gets me going. I just get cranked. Like if I talk to a guy, he's like, I'm gonna mow grass. Awesome. How are you going to beat out the competition? He's like, well, I do all my own maintenance and here we go. It's like, dude, if you can repair lawnmowers and keep your equipment running, that's like a core skill. Like I love the innovation, the creativity, the people that expand the potential for others in terms of like following a dream. Like, there's nothing wrong by any means if you work in mass production in a factory and you're happy with that. Awesome, please, that's what I want. But it's like, what I can't take is like, I'm miserable. I'm like, quit. Figure it out. Go get another job. It's like, well, it sucks here. Move. Like, guys, there are different places in the United States, if we're just talking about the US, there are opportunities out there. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to create a path where one doesn't exist. And that is like challenging. And I know that pretty well. Do you plan on staying in Naperville?
Likely until I find like some sort of a job and I move out.
And then do you think you'll be traveling?
Oh yes, definitely. The like a lot of the scientific sales positions I've looked at, there's a lot of traveling you have to do on the road, which is fine by me personally because I did a lot of traveling from between 2021 and 2023 all over the country, and I really enjoyed doing that and meeting different people all over the country, seeing just the geography, the climate change,
Yeah.
and everything. And I'm fine, of course, of having a career that involves that.
For a time, I think, especially because you're young, if you're wanting to travel, it's really educational to talk to people in different areas. And then one of the things I noticed as an educator who travels in the massage industry is like, there's a weird kind of massage culture that like it's different in Chicago than it is in Omaha, and it's different in St. Louis than it is in Austin, and it's different in Galveston than it is in Baton Rouge. Like there's like changes of the overall culture and like food culture, but there's something about the massage schools and the educators in a certain area that kind of change the massage or bodywork culture as well. I think those things are inordinately interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Even go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, even the academic culture changed a lot too. Because when I was traveling, I was mainly traveling to go to like conferences and to like visit different graduate programs and everything. And when I traveled to like UT, because UT was one of the schools I applied to, um, it definitely seemed like it was a little bit more. It definitely seemed like the people were a little bit more, I guess you could say, maybe like lively and creative because it was in Austin. A lot of people that are like, yeah, like I've been working this boring job, but I want to go to grad school and become a professor and do this cool stuff. So what if I'm 32? It's never too late to start. And other people that were just like, yeah, I studied art for a few years, but I found science interesting, so I pivoted to science, and then I decided to apply to this grad program because it was cool. But when I traveled to like Pennsylvania, because I applied to University of Pennsylvania, which happened to be an Ivy, there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, I did my undergrad at Harvard, I did my master's at Stanford, and now I'm looking at Penn for the PhD. Or I've been at Princeton all of my life, and I want to change it up by going to like Penn. And so, depending on really where you go, I sort of see the same thing in terms of what you're talking about with the culture and the types of people that are influenced by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything specific in the sciences that you want to look into?
Specific. Well, I mean, I'm no longer doing any like research or anything, but there was just a group of instruments or like equipment that I really, really wanted to sell because I used it a lot when I was in my graduate studies. One of them, there's this thing called a chromatography system, where what it does is that you put your sample into some sort of like, liquid solution so that it's dissolved, and then you run it through something known as a column. So a column is this like long, narrow tube, And what happens is that the column is packed with a certain material that binds with the molecules that are in your sample at that binds with the molecules in your sample, and it will cause a little bit of friction where it'll take some compounds a little bit longer to go through that column.
Mm.
And you can actually measure essentially the separation of all of your molecules that are in your sample based on the time it takes for it to go through that column, go through that thick material that's stopping it. A good analogy would be like, you know, you might have somebody who's a little kid and maybe Michael Phelps swimming through the water. Well, they might start swimming at the same time, but Michael Phelps will swim faster than the little kid. And you might have some molecules that will go through faster than others. And you can use that as somewhat of a way to predict what is in your sample.
Yeah. And then,
yeah, that's one thing.
What are the commercial and like industrial applications for it? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things would be just being able to like purify a compound that you have that would have some impurities in it. So a lot of applications in like pharmaceutical research where you might have a group of scientists make a drug, but there'll still be a lot of leftover chemicals that they used along the process. So they got to be able to identify what's there, and then they can further purify it further. Another example will probably be paint as well, because there used to be lead in paint, and you would have no idea that you were using leaded paint unless you used one of those instruments to be able to detect the lead.
Yeah, the only time I can think of when this has come up is I've watched a lot of programs related to like the border and border crossing, and I don't know what the name of the device is, but when they test stuff coming across the border that they think is drugs, they put it through this machine, and the machine like scans it somehow and like tells them very rapidly like whether it's methamphetamine or cocaine hydrochloride or whatever. But somebody developed that and probably made a small fortune because the government is using those at the border.
I'd say more than a small fortune, probably a very big fortune.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is that there's actually a couple different types of like machines and methods you can use to identify like drugs or any kind of compounds. You could use large generalized machines that are designed to generalize, large classes of molecules. Those are expensive and usually cost like millions of dollars, and you need professionals to install and operate and everything. There's another group of machines, and they call these things assays. What assays do is you essentially have a little like at-home kit, kind of like the COVID testing kit, where you get some sample from somebody, you follow the instructions, and if you have a certain drug that's in it, it'll give you like a color identification or whatever. So those, however, are designed for like one compound only, though, and they're cheaper.
Yeah, man, it's so specific. I've like no idea. Like you get into a key like area, and I had never seen those machines till I saw them on the program, and then I don't even know exactly. However, it's reading like a light spectrum when it shoots that beam to be able to discern what the compound is.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is that oftentimes in science, in anything that involves identifying things, you have this area of chemistry and physics. It's called spectroscopy, where what it is that basically people have found out that if you shine light at a certain molecule, that molecule will have a signal that's like a fingerprint and specific to that molecule only. And so a lot of times what people do to identify compounds is specific molecules is they'll shine light of a certain frequency at the compound that they have, and then they'll compare the signal that they have, which will have a whole bunch of different impurities, and they'll look at basically like a library of like known signals to try to figure out and discern like what compounds are there.
Hmm. I mean, it's with James Webb Telescope, when they're taking the data that comes in, and I understood that the light spectrum is like how they were determining what compounds might be coming from certain planets because of the light that's, coming back. They were saying, they said, was it dimethyl sulfide? I think they're having a big deal because they think they're on Earth. It's only been known to like accompany life, so they're freaking out that there might be life on this planet because of that particular compound. And I think they're gleaning most of that information just from the light spectrum.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that specific molecule. I'm not going to go too much into depth, but that molecule is often used as like a standard, like a well-known standard that people use to compare their measurements to. I didn't even know that. Apparently, they use that as a standard in like, astrophysics, but in chemistry, that's a standard used everywhere. And apparently, it's also the case in astrophysics too.
Why dimethyl sulfide?
Because of the fact that just based on the way that the bonds that are formed, there's no I guess what oftentimes happens is that you would have certain peaks that pop up corresponding to certain bonds. So if like a carbon and a carbon are bonded, there's a certain intensity and shape of that peak that you can identify easily. And oftentimes what happens is that you might have a peak between two different atoms. Let's say you got carbon and like hydrogen instead. That carbon and hydrogen peak may overlap at the same position as the carbon and carbon peak. So it will be very hard for you to tell what actually makes up that peak because it's just an overlap. It's a superposition of multiple peaks. Mm-hmm. But with dimethyl sulfide, what happens is that there's no overlap between any of the peaks. So that's why people use it as like a standard.
When you say there's no overlap, describe that again.
So essentially, if I have a spectrum that's big and ugly, like, I don't know, it's just some random shape, a whole bunch of like signals on top, I guess it's basically a giant broad band of signals. What's happening is that you actually have multiple individual signals that make up that big, broad, I guess, spectrum of signals that you may see.
Yeah.
And there's difficulty in trying to be able to break apart all of the individual things that make it up. And there's a whole bunch of like advanced like math functions that, math PhDs come up with to try to break it up.
So the dimethyl sulfide doesn't overlap, so it's easier to isolate that specific compound?
Yes.
Okay. I think I got the basic idea, but that's interesting to find out that like the stuff they're cooking in the stars, however many light years away, is the same stuff on Earth we're dealing with in chemistry. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this was a really great chat. I'm starting to just wear down after 2.5 hours. Congratulations. Most people are like, man, you just keep talking forever. I'm like, oh, I could do this forever. I would love to have you on the podcast again. Let me think some more about like other stuff we could possibly talk about. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Can you tell everybody at home where they can find you again?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody at home, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, That Black Chemist, all spaces between each words. So again, TikTok, Instagram, That Black Chemist.
Cool. I'll try to include links down below here on YouTube or Spotify so people can follow you. Think about what you might want to discuss next time or go into. We traversed, and this was what I was hoping, was why I asked you to be on the podcast. There was something about our conversation where I knew that you could like span like a huge swath of information, and that stuff is like amazingly interesting to me. And it's one of the reasons I continue doing the podcast, is to try to bring on people with different interests to like glean, some dimethyl sulfide information from them. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to stop the recording here, and then we'll chat for just a second. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. And thank you, Joseph, for being on the show.